In the middle of the 16th century, Peter Bruegel the Elder painted a picture of the crucifixion. The choices he made in depicting the procession to Calvary and the scene on Golgotha will probably surprise you if you don't already know the painting. The crucifixion is shown in the far background of the painting, which is teeming with life, activity, and people, going on with the business of everyday life, utterly unaware of the political execution happening in their midst and its religious significance. Bruegel's painting is both realistic and an accusation. Why would yet another regular piece of Roman rough justice have all the attention of the people in Jerusalem that spring festival day? If you're not directly involved, don't be directly concerned. That's true of human nature in the 1st century, the 16th century, and today. These series of meditations try to imagine what that might have been like for people who were on the fringes of significant events that first Holy Week, and yet who didn't realize it. People for whom life was all about where the next piece of safety and security might come from, and who weren't concerned with the monumental political and religious events happening in their midst. Such an attitude is, understandably, still with us today. In Bruegel's painting, everyone is wearing contemporary dress, and Jerusalem looks like a prosperous town in early modern Flanders. Do we ourselves still stand uncomprehendingly on the sidelines of events that change the world? In the words of the prophet Jeremiah, "Is it nothing to you, all ye that pass by?" How are we, like the people of the city and countryside of Jerusalem, witnesses to the Passover? Witnesses to the Passover, the professional mourner's story. People say that the best thing about living in Bethany is that it isn't Jerusalem. I mean, it's close enough to get to the temple or the markets or the specialist craftsman if you want to. After all, we're only a quarter of an hour's walk away. There and back in the morning for a visit to the Fuller, Dyer, Mercer, and these little newfangled Roman-style street bars. But back home, away from the madness and the noise and the crowds. Especially when it's high days and holidays and the bumpkins and panitis come into town. Panitis, Greek, classy word for unclassy people. Those who don't have anything to eat unless they've earned it today. You know, the poor. With them around you, you wouldn't catch me going up to the city for all the frankincense in Arabia. But that's also the problem about living in Bethany. We're close enough for it to be counted as part of the city for high days and holidays. All of a sudden, our nice, quiet, classy little village becomes a suburb of the city, and we're drowned like Noah's neighbours. And the drowning is even more unpleasant because it's bumpkins and panitis and not nice, clean, bracing seawater. Anyway, give me the Leviathan in the deep any time over an Edomite who's drunk too much wine and can't remember where his tabernacle is for the night. I don't like what extending the city limits does to our traders and innkeepers either. All of a sudden they behave as if they're the greatest merchants since the Ishmaelites, raising their prices and swaggering around as if they're at the head of a great caravanserai, rather than small-town hucksters who couldn't run a fig stall in the big city. However, I am glad and praise to the Almighty Lord that I am not dependent on commerce and merchants for my living. I am a professional mourner, and say what you like about the death industry, it's stable. If the lilies are blooming, then people are dying. If the apple trees are fruiting, then people are dying. If the turtle dove is singing, then people are dying. What I'm saying is, death happens all year round and people die, mourners are needed. My mother was a professional mourner as well, and she always told me it's a fine old profession, even older than the oldest profession. Before anybody had thought to negotiate for virtue, people were dying. And I'm proud of what I offer. I've seen so many families who've been helped by the wailing and screaming and tears of me and my sisters. They're numb with grief, they couldn't caterwaul if you prodded them with a stick. But pay me and my sisters and we'll raise the dead with our cries. We allow, I always tell my neighbours, the dead person's family to react as they want, knowing that all the funeral rites will happen with the respect, dignity and shrieking that Uncle Aram deserved, even if he didn't deserve it. That's part of the professionalism. Even the wicked and undeserving get a proper send-off. This last gig was a good example. Local man, prominent member of society, lived in a big house with his extended family, 2 sisters, all of them apparently unmarried. None of my business. The good Lord didn't make me a judge of Israel. And if the 3 of them aren't doing their duty by their ancestors and for their descendants, then it's none of my business. Of course, it's always easier to be eccentric if you're rich, connected and influential. Then it's eccentric. If you're poor, it's profanity. Above my day pay. On my wages, you get mourning. If you want exegesis, you have to pay more to get the opinions of the scribes. So, Lazarus is dead and the family want to hold off on the burial, in a very nice stone-cut family tomb, for a friend of the family, some northern rabbi, to come and do the prayer. Actually, I heard they were waiting for the rabbi, even when Lazarus was just sick. But you know what they say, rabbis are like Assyrians. They never turn up when you're expecting them, and when you're not, like wolves on the fold. So it didn't surprise me that he didn't turn up when Lazarus was still ill. What was he going to do anyway? Heal him with an interpretation of the law? It's more surprising he didn't turn up for the burial. If funerals are lucrative for us mourners, imagine how much the rabbis make. But I'm not complaining. Waiting for the rabbi to turn up meant that the surviving sisters kept the funeral rites going, hot and cold running mourners day and night. We don't mind. I've never been paid an ongoing retainer for a funeral before, and I don't suppose I will again. Make the most of some other family's grief and put food on my family's table. In the midst of death, we are in Lucca. So, we were on day 4 of the mourning, which takes some real stamina and creativity, I can tell you, when the rabbi and his gang showed. First thing we knew about it was the older sister, Martha, the bossy one, running out of the house down the Jerusalem road to greet the visitors. We stayed indoors with Mary until a message came back that the rabbi wanted to see her as well, both sisters outside, away from home. Is there no limit to that man's arrogance? Surely he should have come to them and at least apologised for his no-show at the funeral. But Mary went out and joined Martha and indulged in the rabbi's theatrics. We, the consolers, drifted out with her to maintain the proper level of weeping and wailing, and also, to be honest, to see what was going on. The rabbi even tried a little bit of crying himself. Too late and unwelcome. That's our job, Johab. The waterfall must have driven his mind into the wilderness. Only women are good at tears, I've always said, because the next thing you know, he's asking to see the tomb. He stands there, looking like a lost Aramean in front of the great circular stone, muttering to himself. Through my singing, I'm thinking, don't do it, because I can see what's coming, and I know that Lazarus has been inside for 4 days, and although it isn't summer, it's been a warm spring. Do I have to spell it out? The rabbi turns to Martha and says something to her, and she nods, all pathetic-like. I've seen it before. Everyone left alive at a funeral or by the door of a tomb has that look, sorrow and relief. Sorrow that Uncle Aram has gone, and relief that they're not the ones gone down into Sheol themselves. Oh, and fear, because with Uncle Aram gone, they know that they've taken another shuffling step forward to their own tomb doorway. So Martha is nodding and crying and complaining and turning round towards the tomb and imploring, And the rabbi then speaks out clearly, "Take the stone away." Now we know he's mad. And I cover my nose and mouth with my shawl because the smell is going to be horrible, and I think the extended retainer didn't cover grave robbing. And then Martha falls to her knees, and Mary falls to her knees, and the rabbi's gang fall to their knees, and the wailing from my colleagues turns into a psalm of praise and triumph because, staggering at first and then more confidently, out comes Lazarus from the dark of the tomb, his bandaged hands gripping the rough stone of the opening, his arms pulling himself out from the gloom. And he's standing there in the daylight, and the wind is blowing at his shroud, which is already unwrapping. And the rabbi says, "Unbind him, let him go." And the household servants gingerly go to their dead master. Their dead master. And the only one who isn't crying is Mary, whose face is shining with a quiet joy. I don't want you to think that I'm complaining about the threat to my profession. I mean, if death isn't permanent anymore, then surely it means further opportunities for the professional mourner. After all, before, there was one funeral per person. Does this mean more than one per person? Is everyone going to die twice or 3 times? We'll have to adjust our fees accordingly. And I don't want you to think I'm complaining about the notoriety. Actually, yes, I am complaining about the notoriety. The dead coming back to life is exactly the sort of thing that gets a nice small town the unwanted attention of the great and the powerful. I don't want to be stuck in the middle of a war between the religious authorities, who don't want the dead coming back to life for religious reasons, and the Roman soldiers, who don't want the dead coming back to life for administrative tidiness. A quiet life is a safe life. That's always been true, and is especially true these days. But, in the end, my team and I sang and wailed enough to raise the dead. And I think that should be recognised in our professional fees. After all, that's the most important outcome of the day's events, isn't it?